Hi, everybody. I am so excited. I have my sister. And to be clear, my blood sister, same gene pool, same mama and daddy. Hello. And Dr.
Hello,
Kathy
hello.
Bullock, my academic mentor, my cheer leader when I did my first composition. She wrote it out. She's just every woman. If you don't know her, you need to get to know her. As the saying goes, before you leave this earth, don't go to heaven.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, the great Dr. Diva D. Thank you so much.
So I have such a great close relationship with all my sisters. And we're always checking in and texting each other on a constant, just constantly. But tonight I just hit her up and said, "Hey, what you doing?" And she told me about this amazing book that she's reading, and it really aligned with many things that I've been thinking about for a long time, but it's definitely during this pandemic, and even today in particular, as much of America watched the sentencing of former police person Chauvin, and I just felt the trauma of remembering what happened and thinking of so many others that the same kind of or similar deaths have happened to, and over the centuries, just all of that. And just as I'm waiting, like many on pins and needles, to see what the sentencing would be. And as she was talking about, well, I'm going to let you talk about it. So Kathy, tell us about the just tell everybody about this amazing book that you are reading, and then other these resources, other things that they are connected to about the
Well, the
trauma.
book is called My Grandmother's Hands. I think, is it backwards for you, or can
No,
you?
no, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, My Grandmother's Hands, and it's by Resma Menachem. Some of you might be familiar with it. I was not. I just barely heard it. And it was while I was watching a series about trauma and about the wisdom of trauma and what one can learn from it, that I saw an interview with the author. It's African American male, and it blew me away because his whole idea is that um, is that trauma, racialized healing has to include the trauma that's in the body. It's not just a matter of you thinking and the way that you talk about stuff, but that over time it has become internalized in our bodies. And
Physically
it
in
is
our bodies.
physically in our bodies, passed through historically, intergenerationally, and then within our own lives. This layering up, and it really is only when we look at within our bodies and become connected to it and use that healing can occur.
Mm.
And that it's deeper, that there's a part of us that's unconscious, a part of our way of life or engage with the world. He calls it the lizard brain at the bottom of the brain. And he says it has four responses: rest, fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm.
And that many
Freeze,
times
freeze,
freeze.
okay, okay. Rest,
And so
right,
many times,
freeze. Okay.
right. And so many times when we are addressed with something that triggers a trauma that's within, our bodies automatically respond, whether it's imagined or real, don't matter. The bodies
On
respond
one of
before it
those
even
four things.
gets right.
Okay.
Before it even gets to our mind to
Mm.
think about what's happening and why it's not already done what it's going to do. And he was talking about, he started off with the fact that instead of talking about white supremacy, we should talk about white body supremacy, and that white bodies are the norm of humanity, and anything that is not that white body is considered defective.
Wow.
That's in the US, thinking about the US, really. So he doesn't talk about, he talks about white body. That is equals humanity. The whole concept of race was considered as a different species when
Hmm.
the term race came to do with a different species, like a species of dogs or cats.
Right, right, right,
Race,
right,
race,
right,
that
right.
whole concept. But it's so when he talks about it, he calls it white body
Wow.
supremacy. under which we live in our bodies. Okay. Then he talks about how that has been trauma for human beings forever have been traumatized for various things. And we also have resilience that goes through us as ways of dealing with that as well, historically. But when we think about the U.S., we should think about not only the black and red bodies that have been so traumatized, and it's over hundreds of years and it's in our DNA, of course, but also the white people who are here who brought with them the trauma from medieval England. Even starts there. So there's all kinds of trauma, and the way it plays out is differently in different groups. And so the healing, which he is about, has to do with these individual groups of black folk, white folks coming together within those groups and connecting, becoming conscious with, and with the body and with the ways in which this trauma lives in the body as a way of healing.
Right.
And it blew me away to think about all of these things. There's so many pieces to it. It's like, wow. Because, ACE's theory, which has to do with adverse childhood experiences, was the study that showed there were 10 questions. They took 17,000 people in there. And if you answered yes to more than 4 of these questions of traumatic events that happened during your childhood, they were able to trace that you're 6 times, 10 times more likely to have diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, heart attacks, stroke,
Cancer too, right?
mental illnesses. And
Yeah.
even if you get to 8 or 9 out of the 10, your life expectancy is reduced by 20 years,
Wow.
period. Just by those simple, because of what the trauma does to you within your younger years and how it impact if you don't engage and make a difference. So this guy, Menachem, goes even further to say, not only that, but dig deeper. The trauma, what about for black women for the last 250 years? What has happened to us? The rape, the torture, the abuse, it's in the body.
What
It's in
your
the body.
children taken away, your husband not being able to husband you, your sons, your daughters,
And not only
not
in,
being able
in
to protect.
experiencing trauma, but watching the
Right.
trauma of
Exactly.
others. That's also secondary trauma they talk about.
Yeah.
And for those who inflict harm on others, there's a trauma that occurs to that person, which
Mm.
you know, I
About
saw
that.
that
Yeah.
most
That's interesting.
critically in the 12 Years a Slave,
Mhm.
the film. I didn't see it all, but the part where they talked about down south, the white slave driver, the
Overseer.
one who,
Overseer. Uh-huh.
yes, the overseer,
Mhm.
and how brutal he had to become to
Mhm.
inflict the
Mhm.
kind of brutality that he did on enslaved people. What does that do to his psyche?
Yes.
How does that reduce his humanity and his morality by having to do? So all of
That's
that made me.
and then if that lives in your body and in your DNA, then we are today with Proud Boys, right? Or with Klansmen. Okay.
It's
That's
not surprising then somebody like would just automatically, a white person automatically goes, and you look at them and like, what, like the guy who's bird watching, the black guy in the park, and the white woman just starts saying all this stuff about what he's
crazy.
doing, and just
Crazy.
automatically,
Mm-hmm.
boom,
Yeah. Yeah.
it kicked in that the way of thinking about perceived threats and what's real. And I'm just about a third way through the book.
Show the book again. Show the book again in case
It's
somebody
called My Grandmother's Hands, and
Broken
it's
Lives
by.
of Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies.
So that's the part that I love. That he said his focus. He's a trauma specialist. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's been on things like Dr. Phil and Oprah and done things with the military or whatever. But his purpose is about healing
That's so
and the ways to healing. And
mm-hmm.
so periodically through the book, he will stop, ask the reader to stop for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or a few minutes, and to just breathe and to connect with what's happening in their body, what's happening in their jaw, their neck, their shoulder, and ask
Lord.
them questions like if you see if you see somebody vision somebody standing in front of you and they're, menacing. What's happening? How just be
It's
aware
so
of.
powerful. I remember like midway through the pandemic, it was, I guess it was during the time of a lot of the protests, a lot of Black Lives Matter protests after Floyd's murder. And honestly, I usually I'm hip and thinking about stuff just for awareness sake, but I just happened to wear all black to go grocery shopping. I had a baseball cap on because I hadn't done my hair and wouldn't feel like it. And actually, at that time, I would go shopping more covered up because of pandemic. I didn't have a black mask on, but I may have, but anyway, had a t-shirt, and I just happened to have on black jeans. And the energy, man, the looks. And I went to another store than the one I usually go to. So this one was a little bit more hostile environment. But it was amazing to watch people just kind of look at me and be afraid immediately. And I know for some people that's every day. I have black male friends and some women that's not an anomaly. That's not a once in a lifetime, or maybe 3 or 4 times. But that had not been my norm. I mean, that wasn't something that had happen a lot, and especially during the pandemic, many of the environments I'd been in were different. Anyway, my point in saying that was, by the time I left, I think of it now, I didn't even think of it then, but what was going on in my body, in my mind, in my psyche, I was so stressed. All I could think of was, I just need to get out of here. I'm just trying to get some groceries. But I knew I was not safe. And I was just like, all of these people are scared of me. They're looking at me. And then this, towards the end. So first of all, there wasn't that big of a line, but by the time I finally was ready to get in line, then there's a long line. Now I'm like, oh gosh. And I'm trying to be like, no, I'm not going to tear up the store, and so like my brain is even on an automatic with just trying to say, look, I'm a nice black person,
I'm okay. I'm all right.
yeah, trying to make them feel safe.
Yes.
So then when I get to the car, I'm just incredulous. So I'm going through every emotion of like, why are you afraid of me, little lady? And going from that to, I can't stand all y'all, all y'all great.
Right.
I was there. And then I'm trying to go somewhere in the middle, and I'm trying to pray in the middle of that. I get to the car, and there's an African-American gentleman who's closer to the store. I had parked a little ways away, and he's looking at me like this, and I can tell he's scared. I said, okay, I'm done. I'm done. We're all traumatized. We're all living it. And I wanted to holler and say, why are you looking at me like this? I just wanted one smile. Can I have one smile today? Right? Pull your mask and say something nice. But yeah, I didn't mean to go that long. But my point is, the trauma in our bodies and the sickness. Now, you had told me about another book a while back where they were connecting. There's the connection of, as you mentioned, the sicknesses, and maybe it's the axis. Is it axis? I'm sorry.
Adverse childhood experiences, ACEs.
ACEs. So it may have been that study, but I know you've read a few books that specifically talk about the health of African Americans. And so often people say, well, they don't eat right, or they, certainly many of our communities that are predominantly African American have horrible choices in terms of eating. So yes, that we're not negating that is an element, but it's a whole different aspect of looking at Black healthcare when you consider the trauma.
Absolutely. And what flows through continue. And so if we continue to hold this trauma in our bodies, we pass it on to our children, and not just individually, but there's cultural trauma he talks about in parts of being community and is shared, just like there can be shared healing and resilience too. But I had about 500 things that went through my head while you were talking.
I'm sorry, you should have interrupted me. I wouldn't mind.
No. I'm trying to be better, because the way we normally talk, I'll be busting in and you be busting. And then people be saying, what what y'all talking
Oh,
about?
yeah. Can nobody follow us? I know. I know.
Nobody know what we saying.
Oh my
So I'm
God.
trying to, I'm trying
Well,
to,
I was
I'm trying
talking
to
about the store and that
Oh yeah, yeah.
interaction.
Okay, here it is. Here it is. That one example that Resma gives in his text about the way in which the body does trauma is that there was a woman who was, I think she was Native American, and in her family she was the mover and shaker, and took care of business,
Mhm,
was the big mama of our
mhm,
generation.
mhm,
But when she went into a store that was predominantly white people, she would immediately crouch and
mhm,
shrink
mhm.
immediately. And she was an older person, like in her 70s. She would, as soon as she got into it. But when she was at home, she was taking care of it. And so her kids would see that and wonder. And what he was saying is that she was doing that for protection because she knew other things says where white bodies aren't comfortable, other people die.
Mm. Wait a minute. Hold on. Selah. Just take a pause right there. Wow. So that's a statement out of his book that how he was interpreting.
Not that particular incident, but
Oh, oh, okay, okay.
he had
But
said
this,
that earlier on in the book as
wow.
an
Say
underlying
that
thing.
statement again. Say that statement again.
When white bodies are uncomfortable, other people, particularly black people, die.
My God.
Or that black people are harmed, they
Mm-hmm,
die.
mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. You die or greatly suffer.
Yes.
And
When
that
white
spirit
bodies are
death.
uncomfortable.
Wow. Wow.
And so what happened is she knew this woman by going in, she knew that if she was noticed or whatever, she would bring discomfort
Mm-hmm,
to the
mm-hmm.
white people around, and that would bring harm to herself and her family. So for protection,
Ooh,
and then after a while, it becomes so automatic.
yes.
And then the thing that happens is when you automatically do this thing, then your kids will mimic it and will continue to do it, but they don't have the context
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that she
Right.
had. So
Yes.
they'll just start doing this stuff that is devastating or wrong, and it becomes a habit. And if everybody starts to, it's culture, but it's not really culture, it's trauma
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
been
Yeah.
that's been attended to. It's not attended to. And how many things can we think of in our society as black people that we do automatically, or ways of engaging that really, if you look back and contextualize it, at one time it mattered and made a difference, but they continue to do it and it
Right.
don't even mean the same
Right.
thing.
Right. Right.
That blew me away too. So there were several things about the fact in the body and about how um that was protection.
Wow.
She did that, and how often that kind of thing happens. It was just a demonstration of the trauma in the body and how it can respond.
So I know you just a third. You said a third of the way through the book.
Girl,
For sure, I'm gonna get
I'm
it.
just a
Show it again.
third.
Show it again. We gonna help the folk. Uh, and everybody. I want all of us to get this book. I'm going. I look. I just heard about it tonight, so I'm gonna get the book for sure. It looks. I love the cover. So
He has things online too where he's been talking about these things, and his that's his whole purpose, which I'm down with, is about healing. And the fact that it must include looking at the body and he was saying, as far as even the DNA, they've been able to now
Mhm.
see that trauma can be handed down from generation to generation.
Yes, I have read that. Yes.
But the hope is
Absolutely.
also that, not hope, but he says true that resilience also pass, or people, for instance, black folk have found ways to fight against this trauma. And part of it has to do with our rocking and our
Mm,
singing and
mm,
our
my God.
humming and drumming, that those things will fight against the trauma. And as a friend of mine says, anything creative that
Yeah.
allows you to let, whether it's dance, whether it's art, whether it's, acting, anything creative, is allowing expression to provide the resilience or help create the resilience. Again, he says the brain is such that it's always learning and it always can learn and relearn. So that is a very hopeful thing for me, that we can, what he calls metabolize the trauma and then move forward to healing.
And
Um,
I don't know if you got to this in his book. I'm sure he'll touch on it. He touches on it, and or anything else you've read to this end. But one of the things, it seems like if you work on healing and you're doing that kind of healing work in terms of really addressing the trauma and doing the body work and all of that, and you're re-traumatized, you see that there's another uh Brianna, or there's another Michael, there's just somebody, or your cousin or whatever, so that it's re-traumatized. So is it like you're starting back from square zero, or square one rather, or because you have done the work, you just know how to get to a healthy.
I'm not sure, Don. He touched on that a little bit, saying that he, as a Black man and having worked through this trauma, there's still times when he experiences trauma. He just knows how to respond in his body
Yes, yes,
in a
yes.
way that is healthier for him. He
Mm-mm-mm.
knows how to respond. And I don't think it doesn't end. It's not
Yeah.
disappearing,
Right, sure.
but how
Handling it,
you,
yeah.
yes, he says in his body, he's able to handle it in a way that is more positive. So he touched on that at the beginning. But
So what's your takeaway? I mean, again, I know you.
my takeaway is that he's affirming things that, for me, and articulating them very clearly in a structured way, things that I've always felt and suspected. Or for me, I always thought that things like racism, that it was destructive to the person who was the perpetrator as well as the person who was being
Mhm.
um, the recipient of the harm, that it was harmful to both. I always have thought that. I've never thought about the body and the fact of how deeply entrenched, but it makes sense to me,
Mhm.
that things could be in the body, and feeling like the responses, it helps me focus more on me. What am I doing? How
Mhm.
do I respond?
Mhm.
What how does it look for me,
Mhm.
in a ways that I hadn't before? It's easy to see other people, but now I'm
Right.
stopping, and I don't like to do that. I have avoided wanting to stop and
Mhm.
just be, because I was worried that it would be too much drama. I couldn't hold it or keep it. And he
Mhm.
used that term, holding it, feeling that you're strong enough or capable, or have the skills or tools so you can hold what you need to hold and then step back. He also talks about, as he invites people to take a moment to uh, reflect about something, it's very gentle, because it's a balance of not wanting to re-traumatize or trigger, making it, but it's also about a gentle way of moving forward through this. He talks about clean pain and dirty pain.
Mm.
Clean pain means that any kind of healing is going to be painful. It's
Mm.
just pain involved in moving, but the end goal is to a better self, a healthier self, in the decisions you make. Whereas what he calls dirty pain is when you continue to re-traumatize yourself and do the same things over and over again, and you're either stuck or you're continuing to perpetuate that, which harms yourself and those who you touch.
Oh,
And so, talking about going through that clean pain,
my God.
that helps me. Those kinds of terms and those
Mm.
framing really help me as I think about my responses and move forward, and how I do what I do, and the hope for me, because healing is what I want to be about,
Mhm.
continue to be about through music and whatever. And so, really, this helps me even more articulate and understand ways that it works.
Yes.
So I'm really curious about, as the more I learn, how does what I do in singing and leading and singing and music, how does that, I know it fits in there, but
Yes.
more about how that works, or just more affirmation.
And clinically, yeah. I mean, it's just it's so many layers and wow. And
Yes.
just, something you said, and I'll end with this, well, we'll end with this, but we'll be getting ready to come to a close. But you said how, about not really focusing on yourself, not really wanting to do that at some points because it's too much. My thought when you started to say that, I can relate not wanting always to focus on myself because I'm so busy focusing on everybody else's healing. So and so often as Black women, we raise the nation, this whole nation, right? Have nursed everybody, our own and
It's
other.
automatic.
It's
It's
automatic.
automatic. Somebody's in,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
so
back
you
when
go help them. You don't
white
think about yourself.
people in slavery, they were nursing and they were the mammy, they were the mother, they were mothering, they
For
were
everybody. For everybody. For
everybody,
everybody.
everybody, and you didn't have time for yourself. I mean, that's why. I mean, all of this you've already said it. So much sickness, and not that I would uh, at all try to say that I've had to deal with as much as what our foremothers have dealt with, but in our context now, it is just that we have mothered so many. We're the ones whose shoulders, bear everybody. So my white friends who are trying to deal with racism and feeling bad about it, I'm helping nurse them, and then Black people, and then family, and but myself, and that's what the artist is so powerful, because just like the plane, when it's going down, you got to put the mask on yourself first in order to help.
Ooh, yes. Ooh, better say that again. That is the truth.
Just like
Truth.
the plane,
The
when
truth is.
it's going down, you have to put the mask on yourself first. I remember the first time I flew, I thought, that's silly. Why would you tell somebody to put the mask on themselves
I
first?
said, that's selfish. Your baby is next to you. But if you laid out dead, your baby's still dead. So you got to do it so you can be strong. You got that right. And then, as you were talking, how much is that has been passed down? How much the modeling of how we're supposed to be? And how much of it is that one way we had to be
Right, right,
to
right,
survive? And
right.
how much of that is still the case now, or that we just continue because that's what you do, what everybody always did? And how effective is that? How's that working for us?
Mm, mm.
All
I
of those things.
Yes. No, go ahead. All those things.
I know I was gonna say, it's just all this stuff is coming it's like, wow, man. So I turn on the TV. He talks about a white woman's tears. He says when a white woman cries, everybody stops. People
Yes.
of color, women of color cry, don't nobody see it. Don't nobody see it, don't nobody care.
Mm, yeah.
But as I said, because of the white body supremacy,
Mm-hmm,
everything else is defective. So
mm-hmm.
you have to say the black poet, the black artist, because I used to say it was the default, but by saying it is humanity in U.S., the way
Mm-hmm.
whiteness it's created the sense of this is what's human, and
Right.
anything that is
Subhuman
defective
or in not.
was
Yeah.
is a barrier. So when he says, when people talk about diversity, he's saying diverse from what?
Ha! Love it. I
What?
love.
When that's the first question I ask. Okay, diverse from
Wow.
what?
Interesting. Girl, this is deep. This is deep. This making my hair straighten a little bit. Look, it's going. It's
Lord,
off.
Lord.
Whoa, but I ain't gonna pull it off though. But listen, I want us to be healthy. I want my people to be healthy. I want to be healthy. And I can feel how I'm not. I might go to the doctor and they, oh yeah, this is fine, that's fine. But and you taught me this years ago. Nobody knows your body like you.
We were just talking with another friend about how too often as black women, when we go to certain white doctors, they they don't hear us and they don't see us. And if you ask and demand more information, they label you as the problem child.
Of course, yeah.
So there's one doctor I went to about my hand. It says I need an operation because of numbness in my hand. And I want to know more information about the results of it, the percentages. Well, I said, I'm a pianist. I got to have my hands. This is not, but he had such a look on me like, why is she asking all these questions? No, I do not want this man to be working on my hand.
Exactly. Please, no.
I don't trust that this person, if he feels too, if he's seeing me as a pain or as a problem.
Exactly. You shouldn't have to explain all that. You need to understand. If you can know next, you're right. Don't have him touch you.
Next.
Please. Please.
No. You can't, because I can't trust that this person is really seeing me and it's going to be value. And what study did I read separate from this about the fact that when childbirth or something was done by white doctors on black women as opposed to black doctors, there was a much higher rate of death among the black babies when there are problems.
Yeah.
Was it birthing or was it some other medical procedure?
Probably all of
it. But what it was when they compared it, the rate was just high, and not necessarily. It might have been in his book, but it wasn't necessarily because the person what the study, they weren't saying that white people were looking to say, okay, right now I'm going to make you dead or not do now for you.
It's ingrained. It's
the conscious, yes, in the body.
You don't even realize it. Well, we're going to get better. We're going to get healthier.
Yes, we are.
A link to this book will be in down below, or it's there wherever I'm going to post this video. I'm going to post it everywhere I can because I just want to. We both, are in the healing ministry and just want to bring healing whatever way. But I grieve many times in my community, just driving through and seeing the devastation on so many levels. This person, mental illness, and that person, substance abuse issues, and tagging over here, or person drunk over there. And I remember I texted you guys one day. This is a little while back, and I said just within the past, I think I had just driven like 4 minutes. I said I've literally maybe 5. I've seen nobody that was a normal, quote unquote, functioning adult. I was seeing people, and they're all persons of color, all African Americans, on my way to work that day to the office, and I said, this is messing with me, just seeing my people this way, and I can't stop to minister to them. I can't fix it. I can't, that is just, but we're going to get better. I'm going to get better. You're going to get better. And we're going to help all the people in our train, all the workshops and everything that we do. We're going to pass it on.
Better. Better. We're going to be better. Yes, better.
Control. Yes. I'm grateful. I love you, sister.
Love you, my sister. Love you, my sister. The great Dr. Diva.
The original
Diane
Dr.
White-Clayton.
Yes. The original. Better know.
I better recognize my sister. My sister.
Well, love you. I will share it. Maybe to be continued, huh? We'll see.
I think so. Yeah. If you get a chance to look at it, it probably is on all of you books on tape or whatever. And there are other things going on as well. Lots of interesting dialogue. Right. This one just arrested my attention.
That's right. That's true. So many are talking about this topic, much needed. And we want to just take full advantage of it. So
yes.
Thank you, Dr. Kathy Bullock.
Thank you, Dr. D. Thank you, Dr. D.
See ya. Bye.